Hello there. They thought they'd beaten us, but we are now at peak woke, and the slow, ponderous pendulum of progress and power has already started to swing the other way. So let's give it a nudge and help it on its journey. The pendulum of progress and power has now reached peak woke, and the gravity of normality and sane thought has weighed ever heavier on it, to the point that it is now starting to reverse its journey, and we need to give it all the help we can to set it on its way. The lefty woke mob believed that they could swing the pendulum right over to maximum woke and keep it there in perpetuity. So I bet they're now beginning to sweat. How long can they keep their whole woke empire afloat? How long before their numerous and well-paid diversity managers' jobs start to dry up? How long before they lose their humanity-rotting power over society? How long before they are fully exposed as the emperor with no clothes? We are now beginning to see the cracks in what they thought was their infallible plan of mind control, a la George Orwell's dystopian 1984. And you can feel the mood shift out there as people increasingly realise that they are not in some sort of unacceptable, non-woke minority, that they actually form part of the huge majority who have common sense, something in the old days we used to call CDF, common dog f***, and they have it by the truckloads. They have always at least suspected that there was something wrong with this woke concept of identity politics. They knew that somehow woke was broke. And now we see increasingly that woke does tend to send you broke. But they were forced to remain silent by a very tiny but extremely vociferous set of ideology-driven, hard-left socialists. A tiny set of ideologues who had, over decades, wheedled their way into the top echelons of the public sector and corporate bodies, and used the control they gained over social media to cement their positions. Then along came Elon Musk. Whether or not you like him, and the wokesters definitely hate him, Musk was the one that brought back the freedom of expression to the web by dismissing the biased woke algorithms out of his rebranded X social media platform. Something that, for example, gave J.K. Rowling the ability to bring the laser focus of common sense onto the SNP's disastrous new Scottish Hate Crimes Act. Now, she is already probably too big to mess with, but the combined result was that so many other people could openly come forward and back her, without fear of cancellation or arrest. And as a result, the woke establishment is on the run and the whole hate crime industry is in disarray. I'll ask you, would the Scottish people allow that act to be passed today? Would the SNP even try? And woke is coming under attack in the US too. Not just through things like the go woke, go broke lesson of Bud Light either. Republican governors are passing laws in their states that prevents organisations that follow the diversity, equity and inclusion, or DEI, methodology from qualifying for public funding. And this has resulted in some DEI offices being shut down and their staff let go. And the governors have done this on the basis that they want true, full equality for all, including white people, whereas the DEI principle is to treat everyone equally except white people, especially the men. It works on the principle that DEI applies to them on the basis of division, exclusion and inequity. And that anti-white principle is alive and well among the UK woke brigade too. But the more the pendulum of progress and power swings away from woke, the more that hateful far-left anti-white policy will recede. And then maybe employers can get back to the more sensible and profitable method of hiring the right person for the right job, even if that person is white. And we might also be allowed to buy a book by an author long dead that hasn't been rewritten by a lobotomized woke hack. Nor have to wade through copious notes spraying out trigger warnings. And maybe unis can ditch all those woke parts of their courses, and employers can put their diversity officers and diversity hires out to pasture. You never know, we might even start hiring white RAF pilots, like we used to. Now, one of the drawbacks of letting free speech flourish is that we also have to suffer the outpourings of the pro-Palestine mob. 1 second they're showing us images on Twitter of sick children in Gaza and portraying them as being starved to death by the IDF, despite their mothers looking very well fed, thank you very much indeed. And the next second they're showing us images of well-fed Hamas men that have been rounded up by the IDF as terrorist suspects and trying to make the arrested men appear as the poor victims. Looks like Hamas has been taking food aid destined for children, and the very fact that their argument that the IDF is starving Gaza to death is blown away by their own postings passes them by. Anyway, if Keir Starmer's Labour Party is to take power, the British public needs to ensure they are well aware that more woke will cost them dear. And I think the SNP recent trip up over those hate crime laws will make them think twice anyway. On another note, we know that the British Armed Forces must have too few personnel when we hear that Buckingham Palace is going to be guarded by the French Republican Guard for the first time. Yes, that's right. And it's all about 120 years of entente cordiale, we're told. Me, I'm a cynic. I think it's more about the first baby steps of introducing the concept of the UK Armed Forces being gradually subsumed into a greater European defence system, the European Defence Force. So expect to see more, much more of this stuff. Richard.
How did we men become so weak, pathetic and loathsome? If we were to go back in time to the 1940s and tell the servicemen of that era that they would be fighting for a world where their great-grandchildren would fall foul to the cult of the snippety snip, to the point of never being able to have children, thus ending family lines, whilst their parents just sat back and looked on. Do you think those brave soldiers who gave so much would have crossed into mainland Europe to fight against the scourge of National Socialism? Me neither. Our politicians and our royals, they may lay wreaths at the cenotaph to remember our fallen, but in reality they spit on the cenotaph by their more than willful acquiescences to the satanic cult of the snippety snip. I speak, of course, though, this cult of the cult of children having dreadful haircuts. That's all I'm speaking about. I would not be referring to anything else, would I? No, of course not. So go away with your bigoted, far-right, traditional, decent, Judeo-Christian British values. They are not wanted in the 21st century, an era which Alistair Crowley would have loved to have been born into. Oh, right, where was I? Ah, yes. We have betrayed our forefathers, and if they could see what we have done with their legacies, they would be deeply ashamed of us. They faced machine gun fire and mustard gas in the fields of France. Bombs raining down over all our major cities in Britain. And all we face are people obsessed with posters of unicorns on their bedroom walls. And we run from them. Yes, us men, we can't even stand up for our women against another satanic cult. And we call ourselves men. Okay. If you want a true perspective, imagine there was a group of World War I and World War II soldiers sitting in front of you in the pub who had all been snatched on the eve of battle to come forward in time to talk to you so that they could report back to their frightened friends and comrades before they returned to their respective timelines. And your job is to give them an honest appraisal of the future that they would be laying their lives down for. Your job is to look them in the eye and tell them of the Britain, America and Europe that they would be making the ultimate sacrifice for as they step into eternity. Tell them of this wonderful world we live in and justify them leaving behind their own children, fatherless, their wives widows, and their parents stretched on their graves. Tell them, look them in the eye before they go into battle. Listen, every time you walk past a cenotaph or graveyard, stop and tell the war dead there that it was all worthwhile as we willfully sit back and watch our country being handed over to many forms of pure evil. Towns and cities that to them would be utterly unrecognizable in so many ways. But for us to sit back as evil encroaches on our children would be the last straw for many of them. As they looked, they would not go. Do you think they would go back to battle? I would say that those servicemen going back to their respective timelines would probably desert and leave the battlefields, taking their friends and comrades with them. I'd say that, but maybe not. I don't think they would really, because they were made of stronger stuff than we are. We are cowards, and I count myself as arch-coward. But it's okay, because in eternity, our brave fallen forefathers will know one thing. Our secularist society, with no moral governance, may have handed over our children to this pure evil, but they are God's children. And those that hand over our children to evil just waged war on God himself, and it will be God who judges them. So to those soldiers who died, for you and I, they already know the outcome, and there are no tears where they are, because where they are, all tears are wiped away. And I can tell you one thing, those brave servicemen and women would say, get to church, no matter how fallen it is. Make your protests in these many churches and speak to the vicars of these fallen churches and make your grievances known to them. Tell them to do their job and preach the gospel and rip down their satanic flags. And never let the devil back in. Our fallen have eternal perspective now, not clouded by the smoke of temporal existence. Anyway, what do you Desmonds and Deirdres think about what has been said in today's video? Leave your inspired brilliances in the comment section below for Jeff and I to read. And thank you all of you who support us via our Locals channel, Patreon, PayPal and Super Thanks. Links in the descriptions box below on how to support us there. Because we need all the support we can get to keep this channel going. Anyway, God bless all of you. And bye for now. And get to church.